Moving on from Joe Girardi, I thought
Mm.
is a huge one because they almost made the World Series and sort of went in a different way, and I thought that was interesting because he talked about his falling out with Girardi, just not seeing eye to eye, not seeing, and it was sort of, you compared that to how it happened with Torrey, but in a sort of a different way.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting to pick that as one of the. I completely agree with you on the others points, and you surprised me with the last one. I'm not disagreeing with it. Certainly, the Clemens trade shows that guts to be a 30-year-old GM and do an earthquake kind of trade at that time after the 98 season, because Cashman's always been a good reporter in his own organization, and he understood that the team wasn't as hungry as it had been before winning those two championships in 96 and 98. So that's a good one. The '05 one, you're absolutely right, cannot be overstated because the structure of the Yankee organization still flows from that reorg in '05 when Cashman turned down double the money to go run the Dodgers to stay with George Steinbrenner and get full control over baseball ops for the first time, full control. So those are, I agree with you on those. The Girardi one, yeah, it was different than the Torrey falling out. I don't know. I don't think you'd even call it a falling out with Girardi per se, because almost immediately Cashman was trying to help Girardi get another job out of affection for the man and thinking he'd be good. Cashman's not going to put his name to a recommendation with another team without believing in it. So he likes Girardi. He thinks he's good. Uh, but there needs to be alignment between, like, all up and down an organizational chain, right, to that flow chart. And something happened in the 17 season. And I think it speaks to Cashman's loyalty to Girardi that I was actually unable in this particular case to get the full story.
Yeah.
That's something that's been protected because, well, they had basically, I believe I'm paraphrasing Cashman, but he told me they got out of alignment with something. It was something having to do with honesty and communication, and that happened during the 17 season. Cashman said, what happened was reparable, but Girardi chose not to try to repair it, so I moved on. I believe that's exactly what he said. Um, so, Joe Girardi is somebody who was very guarding of what he considered to be secrets. It blew up in his face a couple times over the years, lying about injuries. And Cashman doesn't like that sort of thing. I'm not saying that's what happened in this case, but that's not really the Yankee way in a media relations perspective. I'm not saying that they're radically transparent by any stretch, but I am saying that Cashman believes that if you lie to the press, for example, about injuries like Girardi did a handful of times, you're just asking for more drama because reporters in New York are going to figure it out. Then you're going to look stupid. Even some of the secrecy around Aaron Judge potential injuries does not always.
You're talking
That's
about
not the way
after the home
Cashman.
run derby in 17? That
That
specifically,
one
or just in general with Judge's injury history?
generally, even this spring, it's like you've got middle body,
Oh
mid-spring
yeah.
general soreness.
Yeah.
I those kinds of talking points are not Cashman's favorites, even now, because it's just like, just tell them. That's usually his philosophy because it's going to get out anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, he and Girardi were not always aligned on that, and I just think that it was a time in which that became too much. There was a specific thing that happened, as I said. Unlike with Torrey, I don't have all the details on that. But the Yankees had decided to move on from Girardi during that season, no
Right.
matter what happened. Now, that was never tested, obviously, by winning the World Series, and that's a great unanswered question. Can you really move on if that were to happen? But that by the time they're in the playoffs, Cashman and Hal knew that Girardi would not be their manager the next year.
The reason I called this one of the big moments of his career is because it would have been such an easy sell to the public. Hey, we were a couple outs away from the World Series. We're going to continue to progress under this guy. That would have been a very easy thing to continue on. We're building towards something here. And instead, he took a left turn in the middle of that. So that's why I sort of call that a huge moment, because at that
It's
point,
interesting.
then he
Yeah.
brings in Aaron Boone, who in a lot of ways is the complete opposite of Joe Girardi, for better or for
Yeah.
worse. Like that's not what we're going to argue about right now, but
Objectively true.
the
Yes, they're very
complete
different.
opposite, completely different direction he's taking the team. Some players continue to progress. Some players, obviously they didn't progress, and really Aaron Judge is the only one from that team still with them at this point. So that's why I sort of thought of that as the other one. Maybe you want to call the moving on from Joe Torre too, but like I thought you had so many great details in the book about why they moved on from Joe Torre and the falling out between Torre and Cashman, which I was not fully aware of.
Yeah.
And so just how I knew that clubhouse became broken, like this even came up, and I think in that was that the Tom Verducci Joe Torre book back. I read that
Yeah.
book way
So
back in
yeah.
whatever year that was, talking about how there was the guys who won championships and guys who had never won championships, the big name free agents, and it was like Gary Sheffield's been very vocal about like that clubhouse was stale, and you walked in there
Yeah.
and it was like, what the hell is going on here?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That the Tory stuff. Yes, we knew that the clubhouse was broken, and there's a lot going on there. The Jeter A-Rod dynamic was a huge part of it. The front office believing that Tory and Jeter weren't being welcoming enough to the new guard of players, and all that. You're making me think about the Girardi stuff, though, and I give you credit, Andrew. We were talking before we started about how I've done a million interviews, and this is a topic that hasn't come up yet. It was a different falling out. For sure. And I don't think the Cashman Tory thing has never really been mended. But again, he and Girardi are, I don't want to say they're close, but Cashman is still protective of Girardi in that era. And you're right, it would have been the easiest sell to bring him back. But I think one of the reasons why I like that you pointed that out as an important moment in Cashman's career is that's really a good example of how he feels it's his responsibility to make difficult or even unpopular decisions if he's convicted that it's what's best for the organization. He's not really interested in the easy narrative or the thing that'll get you the best coverage in the moment or what have you. He really believed that in order for the organization to move forward, he had to make the tough decision to move on from a manager who he liked personally. I mean, and you could argue obviously they haven't been in a World Series since. Um, I would argue that it was the right decision for what that team needed at the time. I can see that that's not an objectively provable thing yet. I mean, it's clear to me covering the team that Aaron Boone is a fit in a way that Girardi was not. But it's a if Boone were able to win a championship, that would settle that argument a little bit better. I think.
He is an
I
excellent
think you're
man.
a Girardi fan. I can tell by your face.
It's not that I'm a Girardi fan; it's that I'm not an Aaron Boone fan.